Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the WWE NXT review on the Wrestle Plug YouTube channel. I'm Aaron Nix. Let's get right to it. Now, NXT opened up with a tag team match just like AEW Dynamite did. If you're comparing, I don't really give a shit, to be honest. But this tag team match, to be fair, was an absolute banger. Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa have kind of stepped into the fold because MSK, unfortunately, Wesley of MSK, obviously formerly known as Desmond Xavier, has an ankle injury. They had this great little promo actually at the beginning of the show where Ciampa's winding him up. He's like, "Oh, you could give us a tag team title shot, Lorcan and Birch, but that would require a pair of and then Zachary Wentz just goes bollocks." Which I popped so hard for because obviously Zachary Wentz knows that bollocks is the British term for balls. I was so happy about that. It just made me happy hearing that English vernacular, and they're so much fun. I'm so glad that MSK are on the NXT brand because they're able to express themselves so well on this brand. No doubt they would have been excellent in AEW as well, but I guess more power to NXT for grabbing them. So the match itself, obviously, Lorcan and Birch not defending their tag titles, but actually just having a straight-up match to see whether Ciampa and Thatcher could compete on their level. And obviously they could. Now, during this match, there was a nasty little fall involving Ciampa. He took somewhat of what looked like an underhook, one-arm suplex over the top, just landed really badly right here, and you just thought, oh, you see those things and you think, oh, and he rolled out of the ring, and then it went to commercial break. Hopefully it was just a work. Maybe they just needed that little bit of time because ultimately he did get back into the ring by the time the commercial break had finished. So I'm assuming it was a work, but for a moment there I was a little bit concerned. But a great match nonetheless, physical, hard-hitting. Now right before the match as well, there was this lovely little moment, in blinking you would have missed it. Marcel Bartel chatting to Timothy Thatcher right before their entrance. And then, of course, right at the end of this matchup, you see Imperium on the ramp, Thatcher staring them down. What the hell's going on here? And that is enough of a distraction for Lorcan and Birch to get the win. And Ciampa's like, what the hell, man? What's going down there? You know, we're supposed to be on the same wavelength, but ultimately it's Lorcan and Birch who come out on top. I think that's good. Lorcan and Birch need the win. It feels like they've kind of been playing the side boys to Pete Dunne's nonsense for a little while now, and although I like them being with Pete Dunne, it would also be nice to see those tag team titles defended in a competitive nature. So this was actually quite an important win for them. But obviously the big story here is Thatcher going to hook up with Imperium later down the line? They looked a little bit disgusted by what they saw. Maybe they expect him to be a bit stronger. You know, they were trying to recruit Killian Dane last week as well. There was kind of an insinuation of what the hell happened to you? You used to be a monster. If they pick up Killian Dane, Timothy Thatcher, and Volta comes back, that's just unstoppable. You might as well just shut down NXT because they're just going to win. I feel like they're building Imperium to take the place of Undisputed Era, and they've obviously got different plans for Undisputed Era going forward. Maybe they want Adam Cole to go up to the main roster sooner rather than later because of the poor ratings that Raw are doing. We've seen that with Rhea Ripley. I believe Karrion Kross is going to be going up soon. So hopefully Imperium is going to be a much bigger stable of WWE, in particular NXT and NXT UK, to be fair, where Volta obviously resides as the NXT UK champion. The way going to therapy was absolutely amazing as well. I really didn't expect to love this as much as I did, because when you see something that is a very serious product for the most part with really high quality wrestling, as this show has presented, I mean, it even advertises itself as no BS. You would be forgiven for it lacking a bit of humour, lacking a bit of laughs. But every now and then on NXT, someone comes along and really ups the ante when it comes to the comedic value of the show, whether that be Wade Barrett on comms, and this time around it feels like it's Johnny Gargano. Johnny Gargano, in many ways, has mirrored Daniel Bryan's career. And what I love about that is the fact that he's gone from being very much the Daniel Bryan of NXT, the guy who you can rely on to being a world-class wrestler, to being actually a good all-round hilarious talent, great sports entertainer as well. And here we are with the way going to therapy, and it just helps expand on that. And this segment was so funny. It had the WWE shine where it was filmed so well. Johnny Gargano sat down and she's like, the therapist is like, well, I normally do these things one-on-one. And Gargano said, no, we're a family. We do things together. We look after each other. And Indy Hartwell's on the end of the sofa writing love notes to Dexter Loomis. And Gargano flips out and accuses her of ruining Christmas, which I thought was brilliant. Then the therapist starts pointing out the fact he's got a lot of anger issues. And he comes out with the line of the century. Honestly, honestly, one of the funniest lines I can think of in recent memory in anything to do with wrestling, when he turns around to the therapist and goes, I know what you're up to, and I'm not here to be therapied on. It's kind of stupid, but it's fucking brilliant. It's absolutely hilarious. And to be honest, I feel like NXT needs this, because one thing I really do enjoy about AEW is their characters. They've got so many charismatic, hilarious people on their show, like Chris Jericho and MJF. And having someone like this who cleanses the palate a little bit is fantastic. And he's not the only one as well, Johnny Gargano. We've got Cameron Grimes as well, running around backstage, throwing money around, trying to completely repurpose the old school Ted DiBiase character. And William Regal accosts him for this and says, right, you're facing Bronson Reed later because I don't want lawsuits on my hand because you are striking random members of the crew, you pillock. And I love the fact that William Regal is just always all business, typical Brit, dour lip, you know, just kind of like, I do not find any of your nonsense funny. So British in so many ways, and we've all got that dry side to us, particularly over here in the UK. And I just like Cameron Grimes in this current role. I think he's really funny. I think we've obviously tapped into a very charismatic human being here, and they're letting him express that more and more. And I think it's just a matter of time before he finds his way on the main roster. Also, of course, we have the continuation of this incredible storyline. For me, the best storyline so far in wrestling this year. The Undisputed Era breaking up. Roderick Strong comes down, wants an explanation. And instead he gets Finn Balor, who basically just rinses him. Just comes down and goes, yeah, you're a bitch, mate. Nobody cares about what you think. I want Adam Cole, and I know how to get Adam Cole out here. I'm going to give him a title match next week. Then he accosts Roderick Strong, of course, again, which is really good because they're making Roddy feel like a somewhat of a sympathetic figure. He's kind of like the young lad who's been caught in between. It's like, Mum, Dad, stop fighting. That's how it feels with Roddy Strong, although he can do with a little bit of wardrobe change. I mean, I'm not one to speak about fashion, but that shirt was a little bit too deafening for my liking. And of course, him and Finn Balor break into an absolute brawl, and that leads in nicely to their match later in the night. We also got Ember Moon facing Robert Stone Brand's Aaliyah, who is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most scintillating women I've ever seen in wrestling. She is so stunning and actually very, very capable in the ring. They've picked up Jessie Kamea lately as well. Again, another stunning woman. They very much feel like the flash and the pizzazz, and in some ways an evolution of Carmella's gimmick, and I quite like that. And I feel like there's potential here. Unfortunately, Ember Moon knocks off Aaliyah in, admittedly, quite a good and quite competitive match, and that was something that I really appreciate because I was worried that it was going to be a bit too much of the squash match variety, where it was like she gets a little bit of offense in and then boom. I also really appreciate how much they're now building towards their shows the following week. Obviously, they're trying to keep pace. People can say there's no comparison and that there's no Wednesday Night War and all this kind of stuff, but there obviously is. Because both shows are really trying to show what they can do. Obviously, AEW tonight, starting out with that huge tag team match with Shaquille O'Neal. They want to get eyeballs on their product more so than NXT's, and that's fine, I understand that. But ultimately, when you think about it, it's just great that there is, 1.5 million plus people watching wrestling on a Wednesday night. That's pretty good in this day and age when you consider how much wrestling has changed and how much it's fallen out of popularity, really, with this current generation of people. It feels at this point that people just don't really enjoy wrestling anymore, and it doesn't really stay with pop culture like it did back in the Attitude Era when you had up to 10 million people watching on a Monday night. And also, saturation is a big problem as well. There's just so much of it. Where do you look? But next week on NXT, they also announced there's going to be a fantastic women's title match. So not only are you going to get Finn Balor versus Adam Cole for the men's championship, the women's title will be on the line, Io Shirai versus Toni Storm. That's two high-caliber, pay-per-view, takeover-worthy main events right there that are being given to you on TV. And that's obviously a ploy to get people to watch on a Wednesday. I'm not stupid enough. I don't have the blinkers on, and, I can tell that that's what they're up to. But at the same time, I think that's a good thing, because why don't you want opportunities and reasons to tune into your favourite TV shows every week? And I'm sure AEW, once I finish watching that later on, will respond in kind. And that's a good thing, because the idea is getting eyeballs on your product, and this gains eyeballs on the product, as does bringing in main roster stars, whether you like them or not. I know people don't like Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. I particularly love Shayna Baszler. Nia Jax, I can take it or leave it at times. You know, I feel that she gets a lot of abuse that she doesn't deserve, but at the same time, she certainly does bring a lot of it on herself. But their matchup, obviously, with Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez, the reward, so to speak, for winning the Dusty Classic obviously took place on this NXT. And what's fantastic about that is it's more quality. They really take a lot of pride in their women's division in NXT, and it's one of the reasons that it is one of my favourite shows. It's no slight on AEW, but we all know that AEW has proven itself not to care about women's wrestling, and it's not even been close, although to its credit, the Eliminator tournament they've been doing recently has actually been absolutely fantastic, and it's been great to see some of these amazing Joshi Pro women getting involved and obviously working on the Japanese side of the bracket. But this match was fantastic, and it really feels like a big deal when main roster talents come down to NXT, and I actually feel like it's something NXT should do more of. Remember the episode a few weeks ago when Edge came out? It's with Pete Dunne. He's with Finn Balor. He's hyping up their big title match at NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day, and it just added that little bit of pizzazz, you know? There's nothing wrong with these people. These are all great main event stars, absolutely. But even I'm not naive enough to think that if you sprinkle a bit of main roster dust on this, it doesn't make a much bigger impact. You can't tell me that if Roman Reigns turned up on NXT, for instance, next week, that people wouldn't tune in their drives to see him. They want to see the megastars. NXT is where they build the megastars, and then the main roster is where they get the chance to really flourish and shine as more all-round sports entertainers. This is a solid wrestling brand. So when Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler come down, even if you're not a huge fan of them, they are still a little sprinkle in the main roster, and they're there to help get these women over, and that's exactly what they did. I love the continuation of the storyline between Shayna Baszler and Dakota Kai, and how this has changed and advanced over time, because obviously when they first met each other in NXT many moons ago, Dakota Kai was the scared little girl. There was even this little nod at the beginning when she kind of just rubs her in. Oh, isn't it sweet? You're still a little kid to me. And I like that stuff. I like the condescending nature of Shayna Baszler, and it's funny, isn't it? When you go to NXT, you get the impression that wrestlers are far more motivated to entertain and be themselves. And Shayna Baszler, this is arguably the best she's looked in months, if not years. Essentially, since she's got on to the main roster, which was, just over a year ago. So, you know, I would argue this was probably her best performance since going up to the main roster. And ironically, she had it on NXT. And the ending to this match was absolutely amazing. I saw people moaning on social media, why isn't Dakota Kai getting more offense in this match? Why should she? Shayna Baszler is a legitimate killer, and Nia Jax, albeit a big old botchy beast, is still a beast. So, you know, it was all built around the hot tag to Raquel Gonzalez. She gets in. You know, it was so well done because you didn't get to see nearly enough of Raquel Gonzalez, and I feel like there's obviously a continuation here, because obviously Gonzalez gets the tag. The referee does see that, but she doesn't see anything else, because Gonzalez immediately goes after Nia Jax on the ring apron by booting her and the official at the same time, which is a little bit schmozzy and a little bit sloppy, and you would expect better, but they can play that off as, well, you know, she's NXT, she's still a rookie in comparison, so these are mistakes she'll learn from. But in all the commotion and this incredible meaty Hoss collision as Raquel Gonzalez just tackles Nia Jax over the announce table, and that got me very excited, because you know I love meaty Hoss collisions. Adam Pearce, out of nowhere, he just appears and he's like ushering a referee down, and a Raw referee comes down, and Shayna Baszler has put the Kirifuda clutch back in on Dakota Kai. She's passed out, and he calls for a submission, even though Dakota Kai wasn't the legal woman. And what's great about it is, even though Wade Barrett is somewhat of a heel commentator, he's defending the brand. They all defend the NXT brand. They're like, wait a minute, what the hell is that? That's a Raw official. He's got no right doing this, and that's great storytelling. And I'm really hoping that we're going to get a long-term continuation of this. It'd be great on next week's Raw if Baszler and Jax are out there going, do you see what we did on NXT? Once again, proving our dominance, you know, being a cocky heels, taking credit for something that really they shouldn't do. And out comes Kai and Gonzalez, and we continue this feud. But speaking of continuation, back to Johnny Gargano and therapy. I love it. Gargano's texting Candice LeRae. He's like, yeah, say this. It's really good stuff. And then when he gets found out behind the door, he's like, oh, hey guys, you want to get some Uber Eats? This is fucking gold. It's absolutely gold. And I love Indy Hartwell as well. She's just sitting there going, you know, I'll be his friend with benefits. Yeah. I'm like, oh, saucy. Like, we all want somebody to pine over us the way Indy Hartwell pines over Dexter Lumis. I love this stuff. It's just gold. Makes you feel happy. It's been a while since I watched wrestling and truly laughed out loud and had a good time watching it. And these segments were fantastic for that. I really, really enjoy them. And obviously, Candice LeRae gets injected and it's just 1-on-1 now. It's Austin Theory. What happened over those 3 days, Austin? And we're going to find out very, very soon. And the hits just keep coming. This was one of my favourite NXTs because they just didn't let up. They were like surprises, surprises, humour, great wrestling matches. You know, you just couldn't get enough of it. And here comes the somewhat debut, so to speak, because he has already been on the screen, obviously, at NXT Vengeance Day. That was the only time we saw him. LA Knight. Dommy, yeah. LA Knight is, again, another significant upgrade. I talked about AEW having guys like MJF and Chris Jericho. This guy is the next level of that for me. He's very much the evolution of the character of The Rock. He almost evolved EC3's character as well. Credit to Impact Wrestling, okay? Because that's where he really made his name, and NWA as well. You know, let's not forget about these fantastic companies, and it's great to see that NWA is coming back as well. Right before this as well, we saw Swerve, quick little promo talking about how he's not done with Leon Ruff, which I really liked as well. I'm liking this more meaner-edged Swerve, and I love the fact that they're taking all of their mid-copters and making them feel important. LA Knight's promo was great, simple, effective. I'm not going to come out here and flip. I'm not going to come out here and do fancy flash stuff like your Undisputed Eras and your Cruiserweights and guys like that shit. No, I'm going to do it ugly. I'm going to do it real because I'm the last of a dying breed. It's a great gimmick. It works beautifully, and I think the sky's the limit for LA Knight because he's a world-class talker. Please, just don't do what he did with EC3, bury him just because he made his name elsewhere. Keep him in NXT. Keep him the fuck away from the main roster until it's undeniable. Hell, keep him there until Vince dies. I don't care. Do not ruin LA Knight. He is money. And then, of course, out comes Bronson Reed, and you're thinking, teasing a little bit of dissension because LA Knight stays in the ring during Reed's entrance. And they kind of stare at each other a little bit, and then LA Knight's like, man, that's cool, whatever. I'm going to leave the ring and see what you can do against Cameron Grimes. And, of course, Bronson Reed takes on Cameron Grimes, who he's just got everything going on right now. I love the music as well. Man, he is the perfect evolution of the hillbilly character that has been such a staple of wrestling for the best part of 50 years. And he truly is at the peak of the evolution of that. And I love the fact he's coming down trying to bribe people with money. And even the commentators are having a good giggle. You know, Vic Joseph says, nobody can see it right now, but Beth Phoenix is dancing. And Wade Barrett's like, even I'm dancing. And he's like, wait a minute. And I love the little side notes, the tiny little storylines that you wouldn't pay attention to. This commentary team is fucking amazing. I say this every week, but they have the best commentary team in wrestling for my money. I just think it's phenomenal. Shout out to Ring of Honor as well. Love Ian Riccaboni. I think he's fantastic. But I really, really, really love these guys. And I just love the humour that's there. It feels relatable. It feels real. You can really get behind someone like Beth Phoenix because she's a legitimate champion and she's such an awesome human being. Wade Barrett, of course, being British is fantastic for me. Got that grizzled kind of angry British edge that I was talking about, that famous lack of sense of humour that we can have at times, just very dour and dry. And I love the fact he's talking about, oh yeah, there's I'm dancing as well, and they're like, I didn't realise there was dancing in Dexter Loomis's basement. I was like, well, there's nothing else to do. I like little things like that. I love the running joke, the running gag that that's where he is right now, because obviously he can't be in the studio. I don't know if that's to do with COVID protocol, but I love Cameron Grimes versus Bronson Reed as well. This is where they do such a good job of building their mid-carders, because Bronson Reed, again, so many guys on this card. We talk about Swerve, we talk about LA Knight, we talk about Bronson Reed and Cameron Grimes. There's just an endless number of people who could be superstars. That's the difference between this show and Dynamite for me. I like AEW, I do, but there are guys on there that I feel have really low ceilings. I don't feel that in the long term, a guy like Luchasaurus, for instance, could be a megastar, not at least with his current gimmick. He needs to be remade over. And I don't want to put a ceiling on anyone, but it feels like, if anything, these guys have higher ceilings. You look at a Bronson Reed, he's just ready to go. And I am a little bit biased, absolutely, because I used to love him as Jonah Rock on the Indies. I was a huge champion of his, watching him wrestle in Australia. And obviously, when he came over here as well, I had the pleasure of meeting him. Just such a lovely guy, somebody you can really get behind. He's a really good human being, Bronson Reed. But it was a fantastic, fantastic match. It was physical, it was hard-hitting, it was everything you wanted out of a great mid-card contest. And I love the fact that Cameron Grimes has to try and work down Bronson Reed, but he's being this kind of limey little bitch, and Bronson Reed is just essentially hyping himself up off of the offense of Cameron Grimes. Excellent, excellent contest. Cameron Grimes ultimately gets the win courtesy of some LA Knight shenanigans. LA Knight comes back, causes Bronson Reed to fall off of the top rope, and boom, the cave-in, which, by the way, looks like one of the most impactful finishing moves. But I'm really excited about this rivalry. LA Knight and Bronson Reed are two big characters. I just don't want to see Bronson Reed once again relegated to that kind of mid-card losing battle. He seems to be getting used a lot as a guy to put other people over, and something that I love about Bronson Reed is he reminds me very much of a modern-day Bam Bam Bigelow. I know Bam Bam Bigelow was a big inspiration of his. He even wore a kind of tribute to him during one of the takeovers, but I would like to see more of him. And maybe it might be a case of he actually does better on the main roster than he does on the NXT roster. William Regal backstage says that he has an announcement next week which will change the landscape of NXT. He was seen arguing with Adam Pearce. Be very interesting to see where that goes. I'm hoping that we're going to get what I mentioned earlier, which is more main roster, main brand crossover, because who can forget Survivor Series when NXT invaded because of the fallout of what had happened in Saudi Arabia. It was actually quite amazing television, and it made for a really exciting episode of Raw and SmackDown every week because you didn't know what was going to happen. It was like the invasion angle, but done with NXT stars, and I'm one of the few people who did like the invasion angle, but let's be honest, everybody liked this a lot more, and rightfully so, because NXT invading the main roster is always an exciting prospect, and they've teased it quite a lot over time. Breezango was scheduled to face Everrise. Didn't get any of that though, because Santos and the gang jumped him and beat the shit out of him. Cool. Ain't got a problem with that. Nasty heels. By the way, I honestly didn't think I'd see a spaceman get crotched on wrestling this week, and that's exactly what Santos Escobar's gang gave me, so that was quite impressive in its own right. And obviously I like this as well because it maintains their heel heat coming out of a big loss to Karrion Kross last week, but that doesn't hurt them too much, especially as they are predominantly cruiserweights. They're a smaller unit of men, but they can still be impactful as a group, and Karrion Kross is a very special case in that regard, so that was fine for me. And of course we had the finalisation, the last therapy session, at least for this week. Really hoping we get more of this because I thought this was actually wonderful. This time Austin Theory's finally on his own, and the therapist wants to know what really happened, and he talks about being in a dark room and getting to watch TV and eat cereal, and then we get this incredible moment where the therapist says, well, I spoke to Dexter Lumis and he couldn't stop talking about you and how disgusted he was in you and how he hates your miserable excuse for abs. And then he starts crying and you think, Jesus. It's so random, but so funny. I enjoyed it, to be honest. And I don't want AEW fans coming for me like they do every week in my Facebook inbox saying, oh, you fucking like this, but you don't like AEW, Sumo, blah, blah, blah. This was done just as well as some of the stuff that I do like the Bubbly Bunch, so don't get your knickers in a twist. I thought this was actually great. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was great fun, and why shouldn't I like it? I'm allowed to like something. It's okay, AEW fans. Relax. But it was fantastic. It was funny. It was entertaining. And of course, Johnny Gargano comes in. He's like, what did you do? What did you do? Look at him. And then, of course, it's all a bit of a ruse because he's got her. She's like essentially a paid actor and all that, which we knew anyway. Shoot, she was. And kayfabe, she essentially was as well. Such manipulation. Interesting to see how this unfolds later down the line. I feel like we're going to start seeing more and more of Dexter Lumis as a character, not just this psychotic lunatic that abducts people. We're going to see more of him going forward, and actually we're going to find out that it's Dexter Lumis is the one that's misunderstood. It's Johnny Gargano that's the one that's insane and unhinged, and it's actually, from a storytelling perspective, very well done. And of course, it's bolstered by the fact that Gargano has just been fantastic. And then we finally get our main event, Finn Balor versus Roderick Strong. I actually think that Roderick Strong is wildly underappreciated. I really do in this role. And he's a great wrestler as well. We saw that in Ring of Honor for many years. And he had a reputation for being Mr. Boring on Indies. And I always thought that was unfair. I remember him being PWG champion for a long time. And I thought he was phenomenal in that role. And he held that title so well. And here he is wrestling Finn Balor in a technical masterpiece. Finn Balor is having some of the best matches in the world right now. Wrestling's subjective. You know, if you watch AEW, you're going to see a far more high-flying athletic style of wrestling, and that's great too. People enjoy that. If you watch Ring of Honor, you might see something that's actually akin to this. It almost feels like NXT is Ring of Honor with all the glitz and glamour of WWE in many ways. People have always said that NXT is WWE does the indies, but with, you know, just that little bit more glamour. And I just like this match. It had such great pacing, and this is definitely why I like NXT more. It's not because AEW sucks. It's because My favourite style of wrestling is this. I like the more realistic, hard-hitting version of wrestling. That being said, I do love high-flying shit, and I love guys like MSK, and I actually really, really, really like the Acclaimed on AEW, and I'll talk about them on an AEW podcast in the future. But I love this match. It was fantastic, and everything meant something as well. Little things like Roderick Strong going for the high knee in a corner, Finn Balor moving out of the way, and then him hitting the turnbuckle and that, impacting his knee, which had been worked on, and Balor really cinching in like the Viper locks and the clutches, and it just felt so brutal and so honest. And that's something that Finn Balor has been doing in his drives since he came down to NXT. It was an utterly fantastic spectacle for a main event. And let's be honest, it was a main event which wasn't over the top or overdone. It wasn't 25 minutes long. It wasn't, a ridiculous 5-star spectacular. You could have stuck this in the mid-card on Raw and nobody would have really batted an eyelid. That's what NXT does. It gets a match like this, puts it in the main event, and makes it feel like it means something. Ultimately, it's the coup de grace and the 1916 that gets the job done. You didn't honestly think Roderick Strong was going to beat Finn Balor. Of course we didn't. And of course, as Finn Balor stands aloft, still at the top of the mountain is NXT. Of course, there's Adam Cole on the rampway. Boom. Looking forward to this. Going to be a killer match next week. An absolutely stellar main event. But what an instant classic by Roddy Strong. And of course, Finn Balor. I feel like Roderick Strong in particular, he's not going to get any hype or massive appraisal from this kind of match, which is a shame because so many eyes are on Finn Balor and Adam Cole right now. But Roderick Strong is actually really lending himself beautifully to this rivalry. And this was a killer main event that sets you up very nicely for next week, and there's a lot of components in play. Will Kyle O'Reilly come back and get involved? Is Killer Cross going to finally cash in and take aim at Finn Balor like he said he was going to do and finally get that long-awaited rematch for the title that he never really got because he obviously vacated the belt when he got injured? Who knows? But NXT was fucking phenomenal for me. I'm amazed. I saw a lot of people whinging about it, saying it was boring. I guess you can't please everybody, can you really? But I thought it was fantastic. I thought the comedic sides of things were great. The quality of wrestling was fantastic. The women's wrestling also meant something. I'm very excited to see what Regal says about that next week. But let me know what you guys thought of NXT tonight. And don't forget, of course, to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And even save it to a playlist if you can, because that really helps with the algorithm as far as YouTube is concerned. But I've been Aaron X. Thank you very much for watching. And I will catch you very soon for more content from the Wrestle Plug as I review AEW Dynamite. Take it easy, gang.